In Canto 2, we had talked about the sylphs and their importance in the poem and how they contribute to the process of the mock heroic, and how Pope is using elements from legend, fairy tales to create a mock heroic poem that also is resplendent with great beauty. At the same time, the society that he describes is one of aristocratic leisure. And therefore, now he needs, after having talked about the journey to Hampton Court and the presence of the supernatural machinery, what Pope needs at this point of time is a parallel, a mock heroic parallel to the battle, to the epic Trojan War. Therefore, Pope will make a choice. Pope will choose a game of cards. Now, why will he choose this game of cards? And how will this be played out? How will the purely playful interact with the densely political, as happens in Pope's poetry? This is what we shall take up in the first 100 lines of Canto 3. But before I come to Canto 3, I need to wade through some of the earlier lines in the text. So Canto 3 begins with the description of Hampton Court. Hampton Court, you'll remember, was the palace of Hampton, was the court palace of Queen Anne. And Queen Anne's reign was marked by an atmosphere of great leisure, aristocratic splendor, colonial grandeur. This was the great time when English colonialism, you will remember, was going places. It was sweeping across both Asia and Africa and Latin America. So Pope is describing the court of Queen Anne. Those by those means, forever crowned with flowers, where Thames with pride surveys his rising towers. Now, you will remember Dryden talking in Macflecknoe about the ruined Barbican and the Watchtower, and Grub Street as a place of waste. Hampton Court, on the other hand, is marked by towers and is a place of splendor. There stands a structure of majestic frame, which from neighboring Hampton takes its name. So he's talking about this grandiose Hampton Court with its palaces and with its colonial splendor. Britain's statesmen oft the fall foredoom. So the statesmen, the aristocrats, meet here. The fall foredoom of foreign tyrants and of nymphs at home. So once again, Pope uses the zeugma, whereby the fall of foreign tyrants. So both foreign policy is being discussed at Hampton Court, as well as gossip about the character of aristocratic ladies. So the aristocratic court is a place of intrigue and leisure, both in terms of politics as well as in terms of personal reputation. Hither, hear thou, great Anna. Great Anna here, of course, refers to Queen Anne, whom three realms obey. Now this, interestingly, the three realms here would mean the Act of Union of 1707, whereby England became Great Britain with the unification of Ireland and with the unification of Scotland. So the three realms. Once again, in the poem, it will happen that Pope will be talking about Asia, Africa, and Europe, and Britain at the center of this universe. So, hear thou, great Anna, whom three realms obey, dost sometimes counsel take, and sometimes tea. So, dost sometimes counsel take, and sometimes tea. This is very interesting in the sense that this is another zeugma, where tea and counsel are almost, as it were, taken together. So leisure and statecraft. Hither the heroes and the nymphs resort to taste awhile the pleasures of the court. In various talk they the instructive hours passed, who gave the ball or paid the visit last. So all they are talking about in court, Pope is suggesting, is about social gatherings and social visits. One speaks the glory of the British Queen. So once again, statecraft, the glory of the British Queen. And one describes the charming Indian screen, once again, a colonial object taken from India. But you see how statecraft and trivial objects are coming together in Hampton Court. So the court is a place where the serious and the non-serious, the political and the trivial, are sort of continuously superimposed upon one another. The entire point being, Pope is highly critical of the way in which the court of Queen Anne is after a life of leisure. A third interrupts motions, looks, and eyes. At every word, a reputation dies. So within the court, all the talk is about intrigue, sexual affairs, and therefore, at every word, the reputation of a woman dies. Snuff or the fan supply each pause or chat. You'll remember that taking snuff was imported from China, was a very important pastime of the period. So once again, you see these objects, you will remember, The Rape of the Lock is a poem of various objects. So just as you have had tea, porcelain, snuff, the Indian fan, the Indian screen, the Japanese fan, all of these embody the spirit and celebration of colonialism within the poem, how the poem is, as it were, saturated by colonial objects, forever reminding you of the context of colonialism in which the poem operates. So snuff or the fan supply each pause of chat with singing, laughing, ogling, and all that. So the court is a place of great pleasure, great fun, and great frolic, but it is not productive. It is a place purely one of leisure. So as you will remember in the Spectator papers, Addison talks about the aged Sir Roger de Coverley, the aged knight, and the younger, merchant. See, at this point of time, England was witnessing a class battle in the sense that the aristocratic gentry was gradually being replaced by the more enterprising merchant. And in Pope's poem also, this replacement or this act of, primacy of the merchant comes through. Meanwhile, while declining from the noon of day, the sun obliquely shoots his burning ray. Another, quiet reminder of how beautiful Pope can be. That the light is fading and it is afternoon now. The hungry judges soon the sentence sign, and wretches hang that jury men may dine. So the judges quickly sign their decrees so that the people, the condemned, may die. This, of course, alludes to the bloody code of England. The bloody code where anything which was more than a certain value would be punished either by deportation to America. This is when you see the convicts are deported to America, or it would be punished by public hanging at the Tyburn tree. Every Sunday, there would be people who were taken in cartloads to be hanged at Tyburn tree. So if you tore off a branch of a tree, you could be hanged for that punishment, for that crime. So the hungry judges soon the sentence sign, the bloody code remember, and wretches hang that jury men may dine. So you've had the aristocrat, you've had the judges. Now it's the turn of the merchant. The merchant from the exchange returns in peace. So the alternative to the court, a much more productive place, is the exchange, where there is transaction of money, trade, and shares. This is becoming the new political center of 18th century England. The economic power is slowly taking over what was the feudal structure of power within society. Right, so the merchant from the exchange returns in peace, and the long labors of the toilet cease. So now that Pope has created this background, it's talked about the aristocratic life of leisure and the court being a place of fun and frolic and unproductive work. All the productivity resides with the merchants. Now Belinda, whom thirst of fame invites, burns to encounter two adventurous knights. So the parallel once again is to the Trojan battle, where, in the heroic ethic, valor and merit is always proved by strength and display of bravery. So Belinda is now ready to take on the two knights at Ombre, singly to decide their doom. Now the game that they will play will be a game of Ombre, derived from the Spanish word hombre. Hombre means the man, right? Translated, hombre means the man. So this is a 3-player game of 40 cards. Remember this, 3-player game, 40 cards, right? Now, 3 players get 13 cards each, right? And therefore, there is a total of 9 rounds, a total of 9 rounds. And whoever reaches, the 5 rounds first is the one to win, right? So Belinda now, and the entire goal of this is to be the man. Ombre is the man. So Belinda wants to be the man. She wants to usurp the power of the man, the agency of the man, the independence of the man. She wants to triumph in this battle of the sexes. So the epic battle of Troy becomes now the mock heroic battle of the sexes, where men and women vie for dominance over one another through a game of cards. Now, Pope's parallel here was, of course, the heroic battle of the Trojan War, or the Battle of Aeneas. But remember also that Pope was taking as a model Swift's The Battle of the Books, where you also had this battle of the bees, and the scholars fighting with books amongst one another. Pope was, of course, as a classical model, going back to Virgil's Georgics, Virgil's text called Georgics, where there is a battle of the bees in terms of epic warfare. You see, even within the classical era, there were mock heroic parallels, and therefore Pope is falling back upon the Virgilian text of the Georgics, where there's a battle of the bees described in terms of epic warfare. And of course, he's also falling back upon Swift's Battle of the Books. So these are models which he's taking. Now, Belinda, of course, wants to become Ombre, or the man. Now, therefore, at Ombre, she decides to challenge these knights at Ombre singly to decide their doom, and swells with breasts, her breast with conquests yet to come. So she's sort of, in battle you go with swollen breasts, but please remember there's a sexual innuendo in those lines when Belinda decides to sort of encounter these knights with a swollen breast. Straight the 3 bands prepare in arms to join, each band the number of the sacred 9. So there are 3 players here, each armed with 9 cards. So this is a hand. This is a hand of 9 cards that each player would have with them, right? So this is how each of them are stacked up. But why 9? Because Pope is trying to provide a sense of magicality into this trivial card game. Now, remember that 3, 9, 7, these are regarded as magical numbers, right? So each band, the number, the sacred 9. Soon as she spreads her hand, the aerial god. So as she spreads her hand like this, a sylph comes and sits on top of each of these cards. See, this is delightful. This is where the poem becomes such an enjoyable poem. The Pope is provoking, tingling your emotions, your imaginations at every point with a minor, trivial detail. But just think about the beautiful Belinda. Unfortunately, I am not even a remote parallel, but think of Belinda, the beautiful woman with the cards just pondering and the sylph on top of every single card, perching so that they can observe the game. Descend and sit on each important card. First, Ariel perched upon a matador, then each according to the rank they bore. So here in this case, matador would be the card of the highest value. So Ariel comes and sits on the card of the highest value, and the sylphs, according to rank, they sit upon the other cards. Then each according to the rank they bore, for sylphs yet mindful of their ancient race, are as when women wondrous fond of place. And now, you see, why cards? This is another question that some of you might ask. Why a game of cards? Why not a game of chess? Now, you see, playing of cards was considered to be a social sport. Many of you might, you probably don't. Your parents belong to my generation, maybe, who didn't always play cards. But earlier, we've seen our parents, at least, indulge in cards as a kind of a social sport. So in the afternoon, people would actually sit down, play cards, and it was seen as a way through which you could while away the time. I don't know whether any of you really play cards or not, but playing bridge, playing 29, etc., or even playing bray. These were sports which used to happen in trains in the afternoons in the countryside. Card playing was seen as an aristocratic way of whiling away the time of a world of leisure and idleness. That is why very often, people scolded people who used to just play cards because they did nothing productive, right? Therefore, Pope is deliberately choosing the game of cards as an antithesis to the classical battle. A game of cards is marked by idleness. A classical battle is marked by valor and bravery. Right. Okay. Now comes the description of the cards. And you see this, once again, that is why I rate this poem as one of the most, what will I say, intricate poems ever written, because Pope is providing every single detail of every card with such brilliance. Behold, 4 kings in majesty appear. Take a look. 4 kings in majesty revered, with hoary whiskers. You see the white whiskers here, the white whiskers of the king, and a forky beard. If you look at the beard of the king, it's like a fork. Forky beard. That's the king. And 4 fair queens, whose hands sustain a flower. Look at the queen there, and look at the flower in her hand, whose hand sustain a flower. That's the flower in her hand. The expressive emblem of their softer power. The flower, remember, was symbolic of the woman's sexuality, and therefore it's expressive emblem of their softer power. Four knaves. Knaves is the jack. In Bengali, you call this golam, right? Four knaves. In garbs, succinct, so they are dressed properly. The garb you can see. Caps, a trusty band. Trusty band, why? Because the knave, if you remember, is lower to the king and the queen value in card. Remember, the highest value traditionally is that of the ace, followed by the king, then the queen, then the jack, and then you have the 10, 9, 7, 8, and so on and so forth. So four knaves in garb succinct, a trusty band, caps on their heads. Notice the caps on their heads, and the halberds, the kind of blunt instruments in their hand, and party-colored troops. So party-colored troops, if you see the red and black troops, once again, troops reminds you of the martial, the military metaphor that Pope is continuously going to use. So party-colored troops, a shining train, draw forth to combat on the velvet plain. Now Belinda and the other knights are gathered around three chairs, and on the table you have a velvet tablecloth. Once again, remember, velvet was one of the objects, one of the items which was imported during the colonial process. You know, you would have muslin cloth, you would have silk, you would have velvet being imported from across the continents. So the ringing plains of windy Troy, as Tennyson famously described, are now transformed into the velvet card-playing table where Belinda is about to encounter the two knights. Now, those of you who play cards, of course, will know, but let me, just for those who do not play cards, tell you which card is called. This, for example, is what is called spades, ishkapon, right? This is spades. This is diamonds, right? Diamonds, ruhiton. This is clubs, chiriton. And this, of course, is, just excuse me for a moment, I seem to have lost my textual page. Just a moment, please. This is the horoton in Bengali, right? So now, please remember that, therefore, you have all the four cards described. So, party-colored troops on a shining train draw forth to combat on the velvet plain. So just imagine the black and the white cards spread over the green velvet cloth. The skillful nymph reviews her force with care, and Belinda gets to call what will be the trump, what will be the highest color in this particular round. Let spades be trumps, she said, and trumps they were. Let spades be trumps, and trumps they were, right? Let there be light, said God, and there was light. So, this is how a trivial card game is, as it were, being elevated to a sublime battle between the sexes. This is the imaginative, brilliance of the poem, whereby something as trivial as a game of cards is suddenly elevated, sublimated into a magnificent battle. Right. Okay. Now, move to war her sable matadors. Now, these are the sable. Sable is black. Once again, reminding you of the system of slavery, of the conquest of Black Africa by the British. So now move to war, her sable matadors, in show-like leaders of the swarthy Moors. So the Moors who had been tamed by the British. You will remember, of course, Shakespeare writing about the swarthy Moor, Othello, in his dramatic text. You will also remember how, the Moor Orunoko was taken as a slave. Therefore, Belinda has called trumps as spades, the black spade. Therefore, she will now play a hand of spades. So what is the card that Belinda first plays? Spadillo first. Unconquerable Lord. So Spadillo is the ace of spades. Right, this is the highest card in Ombre. Highest card in Ombre. So Belinda first plays her highest card. And then Spadillo first, Unconquerable Lord, led off 2 captive trumps and swept the board. So this is the Baron playing the 7 of spades, and this is Mr. X, who is the non-entity who just provides the other card, plays another trump. So Spadillo first, Unconquerable Lord, led off 2 captive trumps and swept the board. So round 1 goes to Belinda. But notice here, what is happening is that Pope is investing what is a casual, trivial, playful game of cards with a language of power, domination, and capture. Now, this, I think, is very crucial for you to understand, is underneath the playful, idle world of the world of cards lies Pope's allusion to the brutal, violent world of colonialism, which involved conquest, plunder, and extreme violence. So, while you read the game of cards and enjoy it, you will need to understand that beneath the aesthetic, you scratch the surface and you actually have a very violent colonial world. So that's round 1 to Belinda. Spadillo has taken over 2 captive trumps. Then comes Manillo. As many more, Manillo forced to yield. Manillo is the 2 of spades. This is the second highest card in Ombre. Right, as per the rule of the game, Ombre has certain very strange rules. So Manillo forced to yield. So now the Baron is forced to play this card and the other player provides this one. So Manillo forces to yield 2 more captive trumps and march to victor from the verdant, from the green field. So Manillo has captured 2 more trumps. So round 2 belongs to Belinda again. Right, so it's 2-0 to Belinda. She needs to win 5 rounds. Him Basto followed. Basto is the ace of clubs. So the ace of clubs followed, but his fate more hard, gained what 1 trump and 1 plebeian card. So he gains 1 trump from the Baron and 1 plebeian ordinary card. So this round 2 goes to Belinda. So it's 3-0 now, right? Belinda is up by 3 rounds to 0. With his broad sabre next, a chief in years, the hoary majesty of spades appears. Round 4, Belinda is playing the next highest card, the king of spades, with, you see, broad sabre, chief in years, old, and hoary majesty. Hoary is white-haired, right? Puts forth 1 manly leg to sight revealed. The rest is many-colored robe. Look at the robe of the king, many-colored, right? The rest is many-colored robe concealed The rebel knave, the Jack of Spades. The Jack of Spades is played by the Baron, who dares his prince engage, proves the just victim of his royal rage. So Belinda is trumping. Belinda's king has trumped the Jack of Spades and the Knave of Spades, that is. Even mighty Pam. Pam is the Jack of Clubs. Even mighty Pam, that kings and queens overthrew and mowed down armies in fights of Loo. Loo is another, a card game. This is Lu Loo, by the way, not Loo. Lu Loo. This is the Jack of Clubs, which is the highest card in the game of Loo. But in this card, it is still a lower card. So who wins this round once again? Belinda. Belinda's King of Spade trumps both the Jack of Spades and the Jack of Clubs. This round once again goes to Belinda. So she's up 4-0. One more round and Belinda will be Ombre, or the man. Sad chance of war, now destitute of aid, falls undistinguished by the victor's spade. So once again, notice how the card game, this, putting down of cards, if you remember your parents, if they were playing the card games, they would trump it like this, right? So it's an act of power and violence which is used to, as it were, trump. So the very act of playing the game becomes, as it were, an act of violence. And you see how the playful is mock heroically becoming a replacement for the epic battle. Right, so thus far, Pope writes, both armies to Belinda yield. So she's gradually gaining power. The Baron has surrendered to her in 4 rounds. Now to the Baron, fate inclines the field. Now fate, the Queen of Fate, goes for the Baron. The imperial consort of the Crown of Spades, his warlike Amazon, her host invades, warlike Amazon. This is the Queen of Spades. So this is the next highest card now, and this belongs to the Baron. What is the Amazon? The Amazon, incidentally, is the warlike warrior women tribe who used to actually cut off their right breast to, shoot arrows so that they could shoot arrows better. The Amazons were a warlike tribe of women who would also, use the men for procreation and then kill them off. So the Amazon is a warlike woman. Remember this, because the Amazonian woman will be a trope which Pope will use in the Rape of the Lock later on, and I will be discussing that in a subsequent class. So the Queen of Spades is with the Baron, the imperial consort. Consort is the queen of the crown of Spades. So she's the wife of the Crown of Spades. So now first Belinda has to play, because Belinda has been playing the first rounds. Therefore, Belinda plays the club's Black Tyrant. So the club's Black Tyrant is played by Belinda. The Baron next plays the Queen of Spades, which is a trump card, and therefore this triumphs over the king. And of course, the Mr. X plays whatever card, it doesn't matter. So the club's Black Tyrant, first her victim died, spite of his haughty mien and barbarous pride. What boots the regal circle on his head? Remember that there's a regal circle on the king's head. His giant limbs in state unwieldy spread, that long behind he trails his pompous robe, and of all monarchs only grasps the globe. So you can see how exactly Pope is describing the card. The black monarch is grasping the globe. So the Queen of Spades has now triumphed over the King of Clubs. Remember, this round goes to the Baron. Therefore, the score is 4-0. 1. Out of 5 rounds, the Baron has won the first round. And now, since the Baron has won, it is he who will play first. The Baron now his diamonds force apace. So from, spades. So far, Belinda has played all her spades, and they were trumps. Now the Baron starts playing. All the trumps are now gone. The spades are now gone. So the Baron now can play the cards he owns, and he owns the diamonds. So the Baron now plays the King of Diamonds, the embroidered king who but shows half his face. You see, only half of the face of the the King of Diamonds can be seen. Once again, notice, this is something which I would like to point out to you again and again, how delightful, yet how accurate Pope is in describing the game of cards. So the embroidered king who but shows half his face, embroidered, notice the dress once again. And his refulgent queen is the shining queen. So round 1, the Baron, Belinda plays something like this, and Mr. X plays like this. Therefore, this round goes to the Baron. It's 4-2. And then comes the refulgent queen, the bright queen. The Baron is playing the Queen of Diamonds. Then comes the Belinda plays the 8 of diamonds, and Mr. X plays the 5 of diamonds. So this round once again goes to the Baron. So it's 4-3. Right. Now, then comes, the refulgent queen with powers combined of broken troops and easy conquest find. Once again, please remember that the queen is significant because, Britain had a series of warrior queens, as it were, Queen Elizabeth, then Queen Anne. Therefore, the queen as triumphing over the board. Then comes very important lines. Clubs, diamonds, hearts. This, of course, is the heart. Clubs, diamonds, hearts in wild disorder seen, with tongues promiscuous strew the level green. So on the green tablecloth, you actually have spread all the cards of various colors. Thus, when dispersed, a routed army runs of Asia's troops and Afric's sable sons. Now, this is a line of great importance. You see why? Because on the velvet cloth, you have all these cards, spread across like this, and it shows, as it were, the power of the white European British army routing Asia's army and Africa's sable sons, black Africans. So you see, what is happening is that Pope, in this particular poem, is using a game of cards to show the strength of the white British army over the two continents of Africa and Asia, which were the powerhouses of colonialism. Africa, you remember, produced slaves, and Asia, and India especially, was the jewel in the crown, which produced wealth for Europe. So manpower and resources, right? So Asia's army and Europe's and Africa's army is being routed by the British army. Therefore, please remember, amidst all this beautiful, intricate descriptions, amidst all the mock heroic, there is always a subtextual violence and a subtextual reference to the colonial process. Okay, so it's 4-3. And then the Baron needs to play one more round. And what does he play? The knave of diamonds. And Belinda has no more diamonds. She has no more spades to trump. Therefore, she plays the queen of hearts. The knave of diamonds tries his wily arts and wins, so shameful chance, the queen of hearts. and Mr. X plays another card. So this round once again goes to the Baron. So it's 4-4 right now. So at this, the blood, the Virgin's cheek forsook. A livid paleness spreads over all her look. So she's, as it were, completely disturbed. She's nervous. She sees and trembles at the approaching ill. Now, the allusion here is to Enos, once again, the Aeneid and his journey to the underworld. And she sees and trembles at the approaching ill. She's nervous, Belinda, just in the jaws of ruin and Codil. So Codil is defeat. In this case, there would be the Ombre, the winner, the man, the powerful individual. And the Codil is the one who is defeated, who is completely taken over. So once again, there are various wars happening here. The war of the cards, which is the mock heroic war. The war of the battle of the sexes between men and women for power and domination in society. And the third war is the war between the colonial and the colonized, the colonizer and the colonized, which is a battle once again for control. So she sees and trembles at the approaching ill, just in the jaws of ruin and Codil. And now, as often, some distempered state. So it's 4-4, one round remains to go. On one nice trick depends the general fate. So once again, this is the mock heroic, as it were. So it is, as it were, on this card depends the fate of mankind. Pope is again heightening and diminishing the epic. Now, who will this round go to? An ace of hearts steps forth. Now, remember that in Ombre, there are strange rules that in case of hearts, you have the King of Hearts as the more powerful card than the Ace of Hearts. So the Baron plays the Ace of Hearts. An Ace of Hearts steps forth. The King unseen. And Belinda now plays the King, which is more powerful here than the Ace of Hearts. An Ace of Hearts steps forth. The King unseen lurked in her hand and moaned his captive queen, the Queen of Hearts, which had been taken over by the Knave of Diamonds. So the King now falls like thunder on the prostrate ace. So the King sort of plunges the knife into the prostrate ace. And of course, this round therefore goes to this higher card, to Belinda, and she wins 5-4. So that is where she becomes the man, the Ombre. She wins the game. So the nymph exulting fills with shouts the sky. So the Belinda is excited and she shouts. It's like the epic scream, as it were, when in the Aeneid, when Turnus exults as he tears of Pallas's armor, right? So, there's this illusion when the victor tears of the armor and cries an epic scream. Now, please remember there are two epic screams here, mock heroic screams. One is when Belinda wins this battle, and the other later on when the Baron will cut off the lock of hair, right? So this is scream number one, and Belinda exults because she has won the battle of Ombre. The nymph exulting fills with shouts the sky, the walls, the woods, and the long canals reply. So as it were, it is being echoed throughout Hampton Court. Once again, a heroic metaphor. Once again, drawing out the mock heroic parallel and the laughter. So this then is the game of cards. And then Pope adds one line, a few lines. O thoughtless mortals ever blind to fate, too soon dejected and too soon elate. This is what is the sententia, right? Human beings, you are too soon dejected or elated. Sudden these honors shall be snatched away and cursed forever this victorious day. So Belinda's joy is short-lived, is going to be short-lived. Belinda is going to lose her lock of hair. So Pope is, as it were, predicting the event that is going to take place. Now that is the game of Ombre. And what does the game of Ombre do to the poem? As I suggested, at the first level, it is the mock heroic. It operates as part of the mock heroic, where there is the direct replacement of the classical battle by the game of cards. So it is a part of the process of diminishing the epic, trivializing the epic, and thereby establishing, just like in the other cases, a mock heroic parallel. This is point number one. Point number two is it provides a satiric vision of Hampton Court and the life of leisure of the aristocracy, as opposed to the life of activity of the merchant. So through the game of cards, Pope is satirizing the life of the aristocracy, of idleness, of leisure, and contrasting it with the life of activity of the colonial merchant. So satire. Thirdly, it is also the battle of the sexes. It refers to the battle of the sexes, the attempt of men and women to dominate one another. All relationships, you will remember, are again within the relationships that you have with the other sex are relationships of domination. Therefore, this too is part of this battle of the sexes. But very importantly, within this playful atmosphere, there is also the latent suggestions of colonial violence, where Europe is dominating and literally raping the Orient and Africa, right? Therefore, there's a rape which happens also at a subterranean level of colonialism raping the colonized, in that sense of the term. Now, that is to be remembered, especially in the way in which Pope creates the military metaphor, the metaphor of conquest, dominance, and color. You see, Afric's sable suns, Asia's troops are all wrecked by the European army. However, having said that, having talked about the mock heroic, having talked about the battle of the sexes, and having talked about colonialism, the game of cards is also a moment of great aesthetics in the way in which Pope describes the cards, the exactness, the noting of the details, and the weaving of these trivial details into a powerful metaphor of battle. You see, Pope allows the imagination to run riot, and it is with great sublimity that it transforms what is an ordinary card game into an extraordinary moment of the battle of the sexes, the triumph of Belinda. Just as an ordinary woman like Belinda is made sublime, Belinda smiled and the world was gay. An ordinary game of cards, a life of leisure, a leisurely game of cards, is sublimated by Pope with his imaginative reach into a sublime epic battle that contains the shades of the colonial enterprise. Well then, that is the first 100 lines of Canto 3. We are, of course, Pope has already given us advance notice that something dire is going to happen, and we will take up the climactic moment of the poem, the actual rape of the lock that happens in the subsequent lines of Canto 3. So that then remains for another lecture to discuss. I'm stopping the recording here now.